Hamilton? Is this the turning point for Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari?
I'm Elle.
And I'm Pat, and we are Paddock 43.
And this is your F1 fix.
Good morning, Paddock 43 listeners. It's just me. It's just me today. I'm sitting on my couch. Look, I am really hoping that my family does not wake up in the middle of this episode. So fingers crossed that doesn't happen. And yes, in case you can't hear, it's just me today. So we're doing a little monologue. Elle is in North Carolina right now with NASCAR. She has not, I don't believe she's actually even been able to watch the race yet. So you guys just have me today. And look, I really hope that I don't rant too much or go on too big of a monologue. So I'm going to try and keep this as snappy as possible. My intention was to record this last night, but my son had other plans. So you just got me, and I feel like I have deja vu because I was sitting right in this spot yesterday watching Canada GP. Canada GP, what a race. We had a treat, especially for, I know I say this all the time, but especially for Australia, the fact that it was at 6 a.m, being able to watch live. And look, a lot of people came at me on TikTok saying, it's not even that of a good time. Like, it's not actually a good time. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, I would rather a 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Sunday. But the fact that you can wake up and watch it and not have to worry about seeing spoilers before you watch it was fantastic. Granted, yes, I didn't watch quali at 2 a.m. But you gotta just be happy with what you're given, you know? But Canada GP, it delivered, and we knew that it was going to be an exciting weekend. It's funny because this morning I was sitting thinking, I remember last week's episode chatting with Elle and saying the McLarens and the Mercedes are the team to watch. Obviously, Mercedes is a team to watch. I've been saying this since last year, since before the season begun. McLaren, we'll get into McLaren, but McLaren were not the team to watch, or they were the team to watch if you didn't. The team to watch if you want a team to watch. What not to do is what I'm trying to say. What not to do was McLaren, but Mercedes. And look, I'm sure everyone listening did watch the battle, because the Mercedes civil war has begun. The Mercedes civil war has begun. It was epic. So, interesting race start, actually. So, the McLaren, Lando actually took the lead, which was surprisingly interesting, especially with what they were racing on. George and Kimi. Look, we had a sprint weekend this weekend, and George dominated all weekend. He took the sprint pole. He took the sprint win. He took the quali pole. So, I think I even made a TikTok about how confident George must be feeling going into this. And I know as well, we said, because Canada is one of his favourite circuits. He won last year. He traditionally performs really well in Canada. So what was expected from George was quite high, and I'm sure he had very high expectations for himself. And he lost it in lap 30. And it was such a bummer because the battle between George and Kimi was fantastic. I think they took the race lead off each other. Look, I think it was around 5 times. It was epic. And George had a power unit failure on lap 30. And honestly, look, I know that a lot of people don't really like George. I think that I can understand when people are saying when they think he might be arrogant or whatnot, but I don't think he's a bad person. I always look at people at, are they a good person? Are they a bad person? I don't think he's a bad person. And I think that he does deserve a championship. He really does deserve a championship. And he's been racing for 8 years, especially off the back of seeing his teammate, especially off the back of seeing someone like Lando Norris, who he has raced with essentially his entire life throughout karting years, see him win a world championship. surely George is going, this is my year. This is my year. And I know that we are still pretty early on in the season. It's only race 5 to be talking about World Drivers' Championships, but it's still World Drivers' Championships are won at certain points. And I can fully understand that things can be turned around. Mercedes could make a decision. They could say, you know what, we're going to go with George, which I don't think that will be the case. But being able to win a world championship, like having the opportunity where your car is in the right performance level, is rare. Granted that Mercedes had that dominance from 2014 to 2021. They had that dominance, but obviously as well we have to talk about, which I will discuss at the end of the duo rule that's coming in, that was introduced this year, but they're going to speak about after this weekend. And yeah, so my heart broke for George because, going out with a power unit failure, I do think as well it would have been interesting to see what would have happened, the battle between Kimi and George, had that not happened, had he not have the power unit failure. Kimi, we saw him getting pretty upset in the sprint race. And I think that really, sorry to be ageist, but I think that really does show his age. He was not happy at all. And had that happened in the race between George and Kimi, I don't know whether maybe Kimi would have lost it and something else could have happened. But the images of George when he crashed, I don't want to say crashed, when he had the power unit failure, when he DNF'd, his car stopped, he grabbed his headrest, he threw his headrest. I was watching the TV like, oh my goodness. He then stood up, he bashed his car, and then he was just standing at the gate watching his car, and the memes that have come out after that have been chef's kiss. Thank you, internet, for providing. It's pretty crazy to think Mercedes didn't lose that to someone. Mercedes lost that thanks to themselves. And granted, at least Kimi did win the race, so they had that element. But it was a real bummer, and I really felt for George because this could have potentially cost him his World Drivers' Championship. We don't know. I know it's very early on, but this could play a big part on how he goes into the next races mentally, how I think that he's probably someone that is quite switched on and mentally headstrong, so I think he will be okay, but I really did feel for him. And Kimi winning his 4th race in a row. Kimi winning his 4th race in a row. He is 19 years old. He is on the way. He's on the way of becoming a World Drivers' Championship. We can't say that's not the case. It's just whether or not he will have the maturity to hold it together in that sense, and what Mercedes decides to do. But I loved seeing Kimi on that podium. I obviously, being Italian, I loved hearing the Italian national anthem. It's also great always seeing the Ferrari team singing the national anthem so proudly, because I know that they are the Ferrari team, but I'm sure they're also happy to see Antonelli on the podium, because Antonelli's a national treasure. I was speaking to my dad the other day. He lives in Italy, and he was saying it's crazy. It's absolute chaos how loved he is, as he should be, just like Oscar is our national treasure. But yeah, poor George did everything right this weekend. He did everything right. And he didn't convert. Such a bummer. But, on the topic of Ferrari, Lewis Hamilton, second. And the best part of that was probably the battle between Lewis and Max. Oh, that was fantastic racing. And it was funny because Danny, our good friend of the pod, Danny, she's a big Max fan. She posted, "Oh, I'm feeling triggered." Whilst I was like, I'm loving this. And this is bringing back memories. Granted, yes, a little bit triggering. Obviously, the battles between Max and Lewis were a lot. But I love to see it. And what I loved most about it as well was the fact that obviously Lewis and Max have had their issues in the past. They have had a lot of crappy situations, but there was, apart from the fact this was such incredible racing, there was so much respect there. Even in the cool down room afterwards, you could see them chatting, and it was really beautiful seeing their back and forth talking about, that way that you took that racing line, that was great, and the way you did this, that was great. I think it's just real respect. I think obviously Max is a different person to what he was back then. He's matured. You know, we always say here on Paddock that since he became a dad, he's changed. And yeah, of course he's matured. He's older. He's probably looking at things very differently. And yeah, that was fantastic racing and fantastic to see. And I am so proud. And I think Lewis, you know, we've sort of been on the fence where we're like, is Lewis actually going to do anything for Ferrari? Is he going to bring some wins? You know, then there was the whole question of, will he win the 8th championship? That's not going to happen. But could this be the turning point for Lewis Hamilton? Is this the turning point for Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari? Is he going to start dominating? Is he going to start actually performing in this car? Fingers crossed, because, yeah, the fact that he was able to put the Ferrari on the podium whilst hunting down Max was epic. I actually also posted something on our socials of, is Max going to overtake Kimi? Could Max win? No, he couldn't. And Lewis beat Max, which was fantastic. Fantastic. Now I'm looking at the clock. It has been 12 minutes, so I do need to start almost wrapping this up. Also because I'm filming on my phone, and I know that my phone can sometimes fill up. It's not fun. But we need to talk about the McLaren meltdown. The McLaren meltdown. I don't know what happened with McLaren. Like I mentioned, I really had high expectations for McLaren. They brought extra upgrades this weekend after... Well, this is the thing. I mean, obviously they performed in Miami, then they performed in the sprint, which, just to rewind back, that sprint podium was iconic. And Lando Norris was, for lack of a better word, he was in heaven. Lando Norris was in heaven. Lando was sitting there between George and Kimi, and George and Kimi were fighting. Not fighting, okay, that's a stretch, but there was just a little bit of tension, and, you know, you can see, like, how, granted, like, for a 19-year-old, Kimi is impeccably media trained, which I wouldn't expect anything less from Mercedes, but the little digs and banter, and Lando was grinning from ear to ear. He was so... But yes, the McLarens, they performed. They had potential and they ruined it. And why did they do that? I don't know. McLaren are not typically a team to ruin a race strategy, and they royally fucked up. Rain was predicted for Montreal GP, right? Rain was predicted. The rain didn't come. It rained early on before the race, and then it didn't rain for the race. Cool. Bummer, because I thought the rain would bring a bit of chaos, and we are yet to see the cars in the rain. But the track was wet. A little bit wet. Not very wet, a little bit wet. And it was very cold in Canada as well. And McLaren decided to put inters. And then what happened as well was Arvin Lindblad, the poor thing, had an issue with the car during the formation laps, and they had to do another formation lap. And Oscar Piastri was on the radio saying, let's change the tyres. I've tried. We've done 2 formation laps. We've tried heating up these tyres. They're not heating up. They are not the right tyre. But they stuck to those tyres. And lo and behold, I think it was lap 2, the McLarens come into the pits. They changed the tyres. Lando Norris, poor thing, he ended up having engine failure as well. DNF. Oscar Piastri, I think he was so frustrated, and that worries me. He was so frustrated at the team But then he crashed into Alex Albon. Then Alex Albon DNF'd, and Oscar Piastri finished P11. So it was not McLaren's weekend. It was quite frankly, a disaster weekend for McLaren, to put it lightly. If you think about the fact that they are the reigning world champions, that's not reigning world champion behavior. Now, I need to try and wrap this up as quick as possible. Quick one. So, who else did we have DNF? Not a great weekend for many drivers. Checo DNF'd. Alonso DNF'd. Alex Albon DNF'd, Arvin Lindblad DNF'd, Lando Norris DNF'd, and George Russell DNF'd. I was just looking at that leaderboard going, oh gosh, what's happening here? It was a fantastic race. But the one thing I will quickly mention before I wrap up is the ADUO rule, ADUO, I call it, is coming. It was introduced at the beginning of the year. It is being discussed now after Canada GP. This is basically where they're looking at all the teams' performances and looking specifically at the lower performing teams. If their performance is less than 2%, less than 4%, the FIA will give them more cash. We will talk about this next week because it will be more in play. I can hear pitter-patter footsteps outside. But thank you guys so much for listening to my monologue. I'm sorry if I rambled a bit, and I've tried to make this as quick and snappy as possible. Elle will be back next week. Yes, she'll be back next week. Monaco Grand Prix, not next week, the week after. We have another break. And yes, but the next race is Monaco Grand Prix, which at least we'll be able to watch quali live. I am already thinking about my predictions, and I'm thinking a Ferrari, because obviously Monaco Grand Prix 90% of the time is won from the quali grid. Green flag, red flag. Green flag was probably, I just really enjoyed the race yesterday. I actually said to Peter, I loved sitting in my living room with the heater on and my coffee, and then Gabriel came in, and I just love the fact that he is at an age where he's loving what I love. So that was, and he literally, I've got it next to me. He had his Ferrari car with him. And my red flag, just because I have to say something quickly, I couldn't get the coffee machine to work this morning. So I've had about 2 sips of instant coffee, and that's about it. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back in your ears next week. Bye.
I know if I was to the light, I'll be up in the club.